Sukaina, assalamu alaikum. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. How's everything going?
Walaikum salam. It's really good. Nice and early here. I'm excited to be on and be put on the spot.
Nice and
So
early
how
for
are you
you.
today?
Yeah, but before we start, I think this is probably the biggest time difference we've had between any of us generally in the podcast. So generally, I'm actually right now I'm in America, but I'm usually based in London. So there's generally like a time difference between me and Hasnain and Ali. But you are 8 hours ahead of us, so this is quite a drastic time difference. But
Yeah, I
regardless
have
of
a
that,
habit of keeping people awake at night. So very good.
No, alhamdulillah. No, I appreciate you taking from your time and from your Saturday. It's Friday for you. Obviously, in Dubai, that's basically the weekend. So, really appreciate your time and coming in. Inshallah, hopefully we'll have a great conversation. So, just the icebreaker, I guess, for everyone, because all of us here have something in common that we're very well traveled. Ali right now has relocated to Colombia because he loves traveling so much. Full time, so he's a full traveler. I've been here. I've been in America since the beginning of February. I've been bouncing around the states, left, right, and center, and so I love traveling too. But I guess first question I'll ask you first, Sakane, and I'll throw it to Ali and Hasnain. What are your top 3 favorite travel locations and why?
I don't know. I feel so odd talking about travel because I was just speaking to my dad yesterday. This is the longest stretch that I actually haven't traveled at all. My
Wow. Okay,
parents have actually been traveling more than I have
that's
for
incredible.
medical reasons and whatever. But I have been stayed put for exactly a year now. And I only got away once in December to see my family. So yeah, it feels odd to be talking about travel in general at such a time. But yeah, coming back to your question, my top 3 travel locations. Okay, so the first one I'm going to pick is Kenya.
Okay.
So I grew up in Tanzania and I left when I was 18. And I actually did my first ever safari about 4 years ago. So
Wow.
that's really odd for me considering I grew up in the wild, as they say, but I've never done a safari. And when I went 4 years ago, I just, and my children were with me and they're like, Mom, you grew up in East Africa and you never did this before on your doorstep. So that was one of my top 3. We went to a place called the Giraffe Manor. We loved it. It's a great place for whatever age. So my kids are 8 and 11. They loved it. We're in our 30s. We loved it. We couldn't get enough. And we saw people there who were in their 60s and 70s who were retired, and they loved it. It's just, it's like being in Alice in Wonderland. It was magical.
I have a lot of friends. Sorry, just to interrupt. I have a lot of friends that are from that area, and Kenya is a quite short flight away from Tanzania, if I'm not mistaken. And just generally, they all rave on about the safari and how life changing and amazing it is.
Yeah, it just feels so natural to be in the wild and to be so up and close and personal with these animals. And it was just something completely different. You have your beach holidays, you have your city holidays, but there's just something magical about a safari, about waking up at 5 in the morning and going out and scouting for these animals. And the Giraffe Manor in particular, whilst it's not actually a safari, it was very magical, especially for the kids. So we love that. Definitely in my top 3. Um, Another one would probably, I know this is cliche, but it's got to be the Maldives. I mean, no matter how many times I go there, and every single time I go, I'll say to my husband, this is the last time. We won't come back here. And as soon as we come back, I'm like, when are we going again? It's just like a little slice of heaven. And I just always go there and I think, if this is so beautiful and my eyes are hurting from the beauty, imagine what heaven would be like. Because honestly, it really is magical. So yeah, I love going back to the Maldives time and time again.
You see, so sorry to jump in again, but the Maldives, I'm sure Ali and Hasnain have got it on their list as well. Maldives has been on my list for a long time. I actually had a chance to go, and I kind of sat back and thought, well, is it really gonna be worth this? I don't know. Do you think it's?
Why would you even think
You know
that?
what it
Why would
is?
that thought cross your mind?
I made the mistake of going to reviews of resorts, and they were all like 3.9 star, 4 star. And I was like, well, if I'm going to pay that much, and they were like, they were complaining about these little tiny little things. And I was like, if I'm going to pay that much, then these little things will kind of bug me off. So I just kind of lost interest. But I don't
I'd
know.
go and stay in a guest house there if I were
Okay.
you.
Okay.
It really is. I mean, you land. The amazing thing is, right? They're all just little islands. So when you're landing on the airstrip, you're actually surrounded by water straight away. So the beauty starts like even before you've landed. But the great thing about the Maldives is that it's a holiday that you make what you want it to be. You know, you could just
Right.
relax, do nothing, just read a book, can, or you could make it really active. You can go snorkeling, you can, go jet skiing, you can go swimming with manta rays. It's just you make that holiday how active or how lazy you want it to be, and that's what I love about it. But I have not had a bad experience in the Maldives. I have stayed at some amazing hotels. I have stayed at some average hotels, and there's something special about every single one of them.
Wow.
So
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
even if you get a chance to go to a guest house, I'd take it up.
All right. Sounds good. I'll take your advice. And your third option, your third most favorite location?
My third location would be India,
Okay.
actually. So I had the opportunity to go a few years ago. We did I think it's called the Golden Triangle. So we did like Jaipur and Udaipur, and we did Delhi. And this trip was actually more for my husband than me because he is a real foodie. I mean, so am I. I'm a food photographer at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Right.
He's like on another level foodie. And when the opportunity came up, it was actually a work trip. I had my reservations about going to India, but I was like, you know what? Just for his sake, I'm going to go. And it was amazing. We loved it. The food, the culture, the people, the history, the architecture, everything. And the great thing about Asian holidays is that they're so affordable. You know, you can have
Right.
premier service, but you're paying a fraction of the cost.
Amazing.
And it was just amazing to visit places like Taj Mahal and going to Agra and going to all these forts. If you're into history, I highly recommend it. And it's also a place where you can take beautiful photographs.
As I've noticed on your Instagram as well, which inshallah we'll get into. Ali Hasnain, quick fire round. Top 3 locations. Ali, go first.
All right, so obviously Colombia. That's why I'm here.
Of course.
Especially being in Eugene where I am, it's the city of eternal spring, so it's 75 degrees, maybe 80 degrees on the high end, and then in the evening maybe 60, 65, and it just sort of stays in that range. There are beautiful waterfalls, people are amazing, really nice area.
Just showing off. Enjoy it.
No, I'm trying to go quick. I haven't even started. Then I would say Puerto Rico when I went to Bio Bay. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
I haven't heard of it, no.
So
Puerto Rico was on my list for a while, but I never ended up going.
I'm seeing kind of like a trend here, Nouri. Maldives was on the list, but it didn't end up going. Puerto Rico was on the list. What is this?
I'll get into my whys in a bit.
So it's called Bio Bay, as biofluorescent, some sort of insects or something that are actually in the water. So when you touch the water, they light up. Wow. Or even if you don't touch the water, you can see them light up. So
that stains weirded out.
No,
doesn't like it. I'm go for it. What's your third place?
Third place, I guess I would say Pakistan maybe because you actually get
the roots, connection, home. Okay, I get now. Yeah, just a quick.
Yeah, I knew he was gonna say Pakistan. I was like,
it's been a while. It's been a while.
All right.
Yeah, I would say those 3.
Before Hasnain, I'll give my top 3. This is actually quite hard. Number 1, California. California is my favorite place in the world, without a doubt. I'm actually at time of recording, I'm going in about 2 weeks. And just, I think maybe because I grew up in the UK, Sukaina, I don't know if you've ever been, but it's a very interesting place. The UK, it's very flat and very grey.
I lived there for 7 years.
There you go. So you know it. Now California is the complete opposite of that because you got ocean on one side, mountains on the other, beautiful weather, people are nice. It's just absolutely my favorite place. I always look forward to going back, and I can't wait to go back again. California's number 1. Number 2, actually, it surprised me a lot, and that was Scotland. We took a trip to Scotland last year, and we drove up to Edinburgh, and we stayed basically at this place called Queensferry, which is like 40 minutes north of Edinburgh, and it was probably one of the most enjoyable trips I've ever had in my life. That's coming from someone who's been pretty much, all over the world. I really, really enjoyed it. People were amazing. The scenery was amazing. The architecture was amazing. Everything about it was beautiful. It was absolutely fantastic. And third and finally, I would have to probably say Zanzibar would have been a close third, but I'm gonna switch and go to St. Thomas in the Caribbean, where we traveled just because of how blue the ocean was, and it was absolutely one of my best trips. And I've got to do Maldives. Hawaii is on my list as well, and a bunch of others, but hopefully one day. Hasnain, go ahead.
I am not a beach person. I don't like sunshine. Don't like water.
So depressing.
So for me, my number one spot was Spain.
Jackson Heights.
Jackson Heights.
It was Spain. I love Spain. Number two would probably be Marrakesh, and number three would probably be Istanbul.
Nice. So you're
cool. I'm thinking like now that I've had time to think about it, I might need to rework my list.
It's I think it's hard because even as you go through life, I think you kind of, I guess, maybe grow to prefer different things, or depending on your mood and how you're feeling, you want to go somewhere else. Istanbul, I'm the opposite of Hasnain. I love scenery. I love it. Give me an ocean and mountains and good weather, and I'll be happy. That's all I need. So
you can't even swim.
I can swim. I'm actually a very good swimmer. I really can't swim. I've got to level 5 in school, bro. I'm a very good swimmer. Yeah, but alhamdulillah, it's been good. Sukaina, I wanted to get onto one of the kind of philosophies you have, based on kind of like some of the interviews I've read with you, where you speak quite openly about why you decide to kind of like share the fact that you travel around the world and who you seek to inspire, and that is to generally, from what I understand, you feel it's important to make Muslim women who wear hijab feel empowered enough and comfortable enough to travel the world, which I think is a very interesting perspective to have. Why? I mean, what kind of instilled you that spark in you to have that kind of passion to want to inspire other Muslim women to travel the world?
So it's not like I sat one day and I thought, okay, I'm a hijabi. Let me start traveling to start inspiring other women. It was not that thought out as such. I just did it because, hey, I love to travel. And actually, I went away to Seattle on a food photography trip. So I was never into travel as such. And I went on this retreat. And it was on this small island called Lumi. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't heard of it, no.
Beautiful. And
I think Nori wanted to go there.
Sorry?
I'll add it to my list.
I think it was on Nori's list.
This list is getting bigger. So anyway, we went on this island. We stayed there 2 nights. We stayed there we camped, we foraged, and it was just it was a retreat to learn about food photography. But when I finished and I came back, I actually enjoyed the landscape and the landscape photography and the unknown of going into a new area, which, I hadn't traveled that much till then. And I was like, why have I not done this? So that's where my love of travel started. And I remember when I came back from that trip, so 3 or 4 years ago, 4 years, I think, or 5 even. And I said to my husband, right, that was August. And I said to him, right, next year, starting in January, I want to travel to one new place each month.
Wow. And
it almost became like a game to make sure I stuck to that resolution. And I did. So the following year, I traveled to a new place every single month. I went to Iceland, I went to Greece, I went to Thailand, I went to all of these amazing places that I would never have gone to otherwise. But it wasn't like I said, because, I'm a hijabi, let me show how, I can do this. I can go out and do everything that a non-hijabi. It was the messages I got whilst I was traveling and when I came back that kind of spurred me on. So I would get messages from both Muslims and non-Muslims saying, oh, wow, it's so amazing to see somebody who is covered to go out there and make these life choices that we don't otherwise see. Or other women would be like, I got married really young and I have my children, but seeing you go out there and do this, being married with children, with a job, inspires me to go out there and do it. If it's possible for you, it's possible for me as well. So that's where this whole hijabi travel thing came about. It wasn't something I thought of. It was just the messages I was getting that kind of spurred me to follow that path as such. And I think, for us, in our community, I do feel that culture and religion can be mixed a little bit too much. And sometimes our families may lay down cultural boundaries for us, that prevent us from doing certain things, but they do it in the name of religion, if you get what I mean.
Right, 100%.
So, I really wanted to break that and to show that, hey, if you're in your 30s, if you're in your 40s, heck, if you're even in your teens, you can do this. It is safe for you to go out there. You can, just because you wear a hijab, you can still jet ski, you can still swim with turtles, you can still go diving, you can still go swimming with manta rays, you can still go hiking. Don't let just what you put on your body stop you from doing that. And I've had an amazing response, so I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to do that. And I can't wait for the pandemic to be over so we can start again.
Hey guys, thank you for listening to us. Please remember to subscribe to us on every platform: YouTube, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and whatever other one that we're on. We're on so many, but please subscribe to us. Really appreciate it, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conversation.
Do you sorry, Hassan, just before you jump in, I want to ask a question. Do you, because I guess it differs from person to person, but the fact that you were traveling, you said something very interesting, that it didn't start off like that, right? So to you were in your mind, you weren't just you weren't a hijabi breaking stereotypes, quoting air quotations to travel. You were just doing what you love, right? So when you were I guess when you were perceived, for better or for worse, as a Muslim woman wearing hijab who was breaking stereotypes and I guess trailblazing and all those kind of terms, does that in the beginning, did it kind of, I don't want to use the word upset, but did it kind of bother you at all? Because sometimes I feel like, some people can feel like they're almost reduced to a stereotype in that sense, because by merit of wearing a hijab, you become that hijabi traveler, not just a traveler in itself. I mean, does that ever bother you, or?
Not really. My identity is not just a travel blogger or just a hijabi or just a hijabi travel blogger. I've always been the type of person that I've been doing multiple things in my life. So my day job has been a food photographer. I've started online courses. I actually trained as an optometrist before I moved into photography.
Oh, wow.
So I used to work as an optometrist before. So I guess these labels have never really bogged me down. I've just done so much, and I try and keep myself so busy that somebody wants to call me an influencer, a travel blogger, a hijabi. It doesn't make any difference to me. For me, what matters is what I'm doing. I'm enjoying my life. Nice. I feel like I'm going out and exploring, and I'm not going to let other people's labels or opinions get me down. No, it doesn't. It's not something I've ever even thought about, frankly.
Interesting. Hasnain?
Yeah, I was going to mention, in one of your articles, you mentioned the hijab being more of an attitude rather than a piece of cloth. And I also read a really cool statistic. Obviously, today it probably changed, but you traveled to 27 different countries, if that's correct. Probably more at this point.
Not that many more.
Yes. So basically, something that I thought of was, you want to break that stereotype of you shouldn't travel, but you should. Get out there, do your thing. Was there ever a place where you felt uncomfortable? Did that ever come across in a specific? I mean, you don't have to mention it if you don't want to give the country a bad rep, but if you ever felt uncomfortable traveling in this situation, because I follow a lot of travelers that are females as well, and they kind of have some horror stories of specific countries. I don't know if you had any of that experience, and if you did, how did you manage that?
I've been asked this question a lot because I think people expect that if you're a hijabi to have negative travel experiences. I haven't. In those 30 countries that I've traveled to, I've never felt uncomfortable. I've never been stared at. I've never been called out. I have never, ever had a negative travel experience, and I've been to quite a few countries like Iceland. I was in Austria last year, which doesn't really have a large Muslim population. In fact, when I remember, well, in Iceland, I didn't even see a person of color, let alone a hijabi. And the same in Austria, I went there with my sister. It was a work trip, and I think we saw one Indian person in our 3 nights there. But I never felt like people thought less of me, or people were staring at me or looking at me in any different way, or were thinking I was suspicious. So I actually have not had any bad experiences. And perhaps that's why I've been so inspired to travel. I guess when somebody does have a bad experience, it might, let them down, or they might not feel like continuing. But for me, I've been really lucky, I guess. I mean, I just have not had a bad experience at all. And I travel to quite a few places without any male counterparts. Generally, it's just me as a solo traveler, or me traveling with friends, or my sister, or my children. But yeah, no, never. I can't recall of even one experience where I had a bad experience.
Well, let's just hope that you continue having good experiences.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah,
Ali, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that I've been to 14 different countries, and I haven't felt anything either, even though I don't wear a hijab. But one place that I did feel something was in the middle of the U.S., in Kansas, as a matter of fact, of all places.
What was this story? You haven't told the story before. I think
I haven't told you that story.
Was that a gas station or something? Or I think you.
Yeah, the gas station story.
Right. Yeah. Just repeat it for Sukaina if you can.
Oh man, so long time ago, back when I was in college, Nuri would say 50 years ago, but when I was in college, me, one of my Iranian friends, one of my black friends, and one of my Indonesian friends, we took a road trip. And on the way back from Kansas, we're in Kansas at that time. We're just picking up some snacks at the gas station. And while we're picking up snacks, I hear the phone ring, and the guy says, "Yeah, they're okay right now." And I'm like, "What?" And then I just kind of turned and went towards where he was just to see. And there was actually a police car that pulled up that was sitting outside waiting. And I was like, "We're just getting snacks before we hit the road and getting some gas. Like, what's going on here?" But we didn't say anything. We didn't want to make scenes, so we just got our things and left. But yeah, that was.
It's probably because you're a superstar. They probably just wanted to make sure you're safe.
Sometimes I do wonder if it's your level of confidence as well that stops you from having these experiences, because these kind of thoughts don't even cross my mind, frankly.
Yeah.
I was actually I went to France and to Paris this was when I was living in Dubai. So not when I was in the UK, but we went for the Euro final. So hate football, nothing to do with it, as my husband. I trudged along because, you got an extra ticket, you don't turn it down, right? So anyway, we went there, and this was just before the bombings that happened in France. And as it is, France was quite volatile with their Muslim stance, hijab stance. And, I had friends telling me, you're going to France. It's such a volatile time. So this is even before the bombings happened. You're going to be stared down, and, it's not safe. And frankly, I felt super safe. Nobody was looking at me. Nobody was staring at me. Nobody was saying anything to me. So I do feel it's your mindset and the level of confidence that you go in. If you are going to go in and you're going to think, right, this guy is staring at me, this woman's looking me down, she suspects me, you're going to get those experiences. But if you're going in and the only thing on your mind is getting on the top of the Eiffel Tower, you don't even see all of these experiences around you. Your focus is on something else completely. And I do believe that you experience what you manifest. If I'm going to go in and thinking I'm going to get the Delhi belly when I go to India, you're going to get it, But if you go in and you're super confident and you do your thing, I think that's something that's really helped me perhaps as well.
It's funny. Sorry, it's funny you mentioned that, because when you were speaking earlier and you were talking about how you've never had a negative experience, that is the first thing that came to my mind. That you're very positive. Just generally your aura and your energy, from what I can tell so far, you're a very positive person, and I feel like you're right. You do manifest that. I'm a full believer in that as well. The more positive energy you push into the world, the more positive you think about your outcomes and the way things happen. Just generally in life, where you want to go, the more you think about it and work towards it. I'm a big believer in manifestation. So I do feel like you kind of invite that energy toward you. So I'm so glad you brought that up. Ali, just to backtrack of your point. I went to Tennessee recently for a day or two. I was in Nashville, and it's funny because one thing I realized about these places in America, the racism is very subtle. It's not like someone calls out or pulls a gun on you or whatever. It's like the way people speak to you. So I remember I went to the car rental place, and the first thing the guy said, he looks at me, he goes, "Oh, you're a long way from home, aren't you?" And he said that, and I was like, you don't think about it. You don't think it's that big a deal, but then you go home 24 hours later, like, wow, that was actually a pretty racist thing to say. And he dropped some things like, oh yeah, our economy has been very bad since this new president. Our old president was much better. He just like throwing in these random things. So that's one thing I realized about racism. Sometimes it can be very subtle. You don't even realize it until I guess later on. Off the back of that point, one more. Sorry, I'm waffling on, but just to kind of bring your points together, Sukaina, yours and Ali's. I have a friend who cycled the world for charity. So he basically left the UK, went across Europe, Western Europe, Turkey, China, Pakistan, hoping to get my geography right, South America, and came back. And I asked him, I was like, listen, what's the state of the world? Give it to me. Tell me exactly what's going on. Are we screwed or is everything okay? And he was like, bro, I'll be honest with you. The second I left Western Europe, everything was amazing. The second I left Western Europe, people were nice. People invite us into their homes. People offer you food. People offer you drink. The generosity itself is incredible. So I guess that was kind of one take on that, which I thought was quite interesting. So Kenny, I know you mentioned that this past year you've traveled only once, and this is coming from someone who has the desire and need to travel once a month. So I'm similar in the fact that I have to travel once every 2 months, otherwise I just lose my mind. So how was that for you, and like mentally, psychologically? I mean, was it difficult for you? How did you cope, I guess?
I didn't have a choice. It's not like I had a choice. So when your choices are stripped away from you, you just got to go with the flow.
Right.
So I've just tried to keep myself busy. It's given me time to do things that I've been thinking about for a long time, but never put into action. So no, I actually haven't been thinking, I've not been remorsing about not traveling. I've just had enough on my plate to keep me busy. And I have a very OCD personality. When I start doing something, I like get into it like fully, like 300%. Like I forget anything and everything around me, as my husband says. So I've been super busy. I got my course off the ground that I've been thinking about for years, and it took me 9 months to do that. And had I been traveling, I just wouldn't have had the time to give to that. So everything happens for a reason. And the reason the pandemic happened for me is that I could focus on my other interests, which I've been able to get off the ground. So yeah, and I'm actually now thinking, I'm not really sure if the lifestyle that I had set for myself of traveling so often is something I want. You know how they say that,
okay.
When you get what you want, you realize you might not have always wanted that, or that's not what's keeping you happy. And I love to travel, like, don't get me wrong, but to have these aspirations or these goals of traveling once a month, sometimes you can become a little bit too competitive within yourself and do it for the wrong reasons. Because, okay, I set that goal, now I must get it done, come rain or shine, So it's helped me to slow down and focus on other areas of my life that I'm very glad that I did.
100%. I think COVID did all of that for us. Ali, did you have something to say?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just blindsided you. I saw you mute, so go ahead.
Yeah. So I actually wanted to talk a little bit about her photography as far as with the food, right?
Right.
So I think I'm pretty good at taking pictures of my food before I eat.
Wait, please
Are
don't
you?
please
Let
don't
me be
complain.
the judge.
But
Ali, you can't. You don't bring a filmmaker and be like, you know what, I can take videos too. You can't do that, bro. Jeez. Go on, carry on.
no, but what I was gonna say seriously was like I started off and I thought to myself like, okay, maybe I can do this, but I can't. Like, I don't want to sit there and do all the editing on. So I wanted to ask you, like, how long does it actually take you to like edit a picture once you take it? Like, maybe you take like 10 or 15 or 20. I don't know. So tell me what the process is like, if you would.
So my main clientele are either editorial magazines. So I don't know if you've heard of Weight Rose, for instance, or like the Jamie Oliver magazine that used to be there. So these are editorial magazines, and then restaurant photography. So menu photography, or if they want like content for their social media. So if it's those kind of images, per image, it would probably take me less than 5 minutes. And there are ways to make your workflow easier. I'm sure there is in videography as well, but there's something called batch editing, where if the lighting is the same, you can actually just batch edit and like paste and edit onto all of the images. So if that's the case, and I use flash photography a lot for my food now, then I can edit super quickly, two minutes per image, if that. If I'm actually working for commercial clients like Pizza Hut or Subway, it could take a whole day, because these images they're practically not real. I remember my first commercial job, I cried because it was so difficult. It was so hard. The pressure of it, I felt like I was, I don't know, working for some government organization on spy theories or what. It was just super difficult. It was one of the worst days. Anyway. We go to this Pizza Hut shoot and it's just one shot. Like, they want one final deliverable. So in my head, I'm thinking super easy. These pizzas start coming out and I take a photo, and our marketing manager goes, okay, well, the crust on this is perfect. Pepperoni looks crap. So they bring another pizza out. Pepperoni is top notch, but the cheese is just not stretchy enough, right? The third, and you go on. And then at the end of the day, they go to me, right, now I want you to comp all of these images together. So I want you to take the crust off the first one, and I want the cheese on slice 3 off image 41, and then the pepperoni looks good from the pizza number 27, but not that last pepperoni, that looked best in, the pizza that came out at 30. And then you're basically compositing or creating one pizza shot from about 50 pizzas. So you spend days editing that. And eventually I've learned now to just, outsource that, because that's not my area of specialty. And it just gives me so much anxiety to have to do that. So it just really depends on the client and the job that you're going in for.
That sounds like a lot of work. If you're making 50 pizzas, who gets to eat them afterwards?
Nobody, because they're not worthy of eating. Gosh, Pizza Hut is never going to hire me after this, are they?
No.
Let's hope they're not listening to the podcast.
Hasnain, sorry, before you jump in, I actually had a quick one. What you spoke about.
Man, they're never quick.
Sorry, man. I have a lot of thoughts.
They're not. His quick ones are like 4-minute questions, like 4 minutes long to get to like. Bro, it's not poetry. It's just a question.
Oh my god. When you thank you, Ali. When you were talking about your process, it's very interesting, because with videography and editing, it's the same kind of thing. It's like, there are ways to make your workflow faster. There are ways to make your work more efficient. But with this specific craft, I think one thing I want to kind of understand is, I guess, where your passion and your love for the craft and where that kind of lies, and how that vibes with the fact that it's also, you're working for commercial clients, right? So, for example, that Pizza Hut shoot, it's hard, it's tough, you're working to a client's satisfaction, but at the same time, you're doing what you love, right? Especially even with you mentioned Weight Rose and the Jamie Oliver magazine as well. Like when you've got a shoot and you're doing I guess food photography, how do you kind of leverage the fact that you love what you do versus it's also a job and you're trying to please a client?
So I want to preface this by saying that when a job comes up, and this might not be the most popular answer out there, but when a job does come up to me, you either do it for love or you do it for money.
Wow. Okay.
And at the end of the day, you've got bills to pay. I've got bills to pay. So I do not enjoy commercial jobs because they're not as creative. Every single thing has its place in commercial photography. And you as a photographer, and you're in a room with up to 20 people with 20 different or 40 different opinions from these 20 people, you know, and your individual opinion does not count. You know, it's generally, in fact, it's generally just one agency, or, you know, not even one person making this opinion with, or decision with commercial photography. So these kind of jobs are the ones that pay your bills, and, you know, they give you experience and you learn things on these jobs, but you don't necessarily do it for the love. And then there's those editorial jobs, or the travel jobs, or perhaps even cookbook jobs. That's what you do for love. And you might get paid half the amount on these jobs, but it's creative, it's inspiring, and you actually enjoy what you're doing and you're excited about them. So whilst this whole food photography started off as a hobby for me, and then it transpired into becoming my full-time gig, I freelance, but, you know, as full-time as a food photographer, there are times when I'll take a job and I know I'm not going to enjoy it, but got to pay the bills, right?
Right.
And if you're good at it, why not? So I always say that whenever a job comes up, it's not like I'm just going to pick the jobs that I love doing. There are jobs where I grow on the job, or where I'm going to learn on the job, but I might not necessarily enjoy doing it.
Hasnain, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to comment on the freelancing stuff, because we make fun of Nuri for being a freelancer. He wants to make sure that every podcast is known that he's a freelancer.
So let me just give the caveat, as I do with every guest that we bring on, Sukaina. So basically, the last 10 episodes or so, I transitioned to full-time freelancing this year. I used to work for the Muslim Vibe full-time. Now I'm a full-time freelancer, and every episode we always have this argument between me and Hasnain, because he's employed. Me and Ali run our own businesses, and Hasnain's a 9-to-5er, so there's always that back and forth. So that's the context. Go ahead, Ali. Go ahead.
Ali, you have a question? Because I was gonna go. So, anyways, I'm gonna go. So, you know, something you mentioned previously was, you know, when you went to India, and I read that whole article. It was actually really, really amazing. India's on my list to go. But when I came across you, you know, it was very interesting to see Traveler, and then, you know, your food photography, because we've actually had a chef on, and we actually had a food reporter on, and for someone like yourself who's traveled to so many places, and I'm sure you've tried so many different foods, did you ever find yourself discovering culture through the food, and to go even deeper than that, discovering history through the food you tried to these places you traveled to?
I think India is a great example of that, because the diversity of food, the cultural diversity, the religious diversity, just even you'll go down one street and the diversity you'll get within just the people on this one street is going to blow your mind, you know. So yes, I would say that in some places, especially Turkey is another one, where, you know, Turkey, definitely, because I went on a press trip with Turkish tourism, and it was amazing to see how food brings cultures together, and how passionate people are about their culture through food. So that's been like an area that's been really nice to explore. And my husband, I'm not really much into history. Like I'm into photography, I'm into food, I like my food, but he's very much into history. So when we went to India, and he's a foodie, it was amazing for him to like walk down Chandni Chowk. We had a guide, and, you know, they were just explaining to us how, different vendors have been there for years, and literally their craft has been passed down from father to father to father to son. It's amazing to see. It is. But yeah, India was a great one where you can explore history, culture, and food so well, and it tastes so good.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm
This is
hungry
totally
right now.
off topic. This is totally off topic, but I'm trying to read what it says behind you. What is that artificial lightning?
It's not lightning, it's lighting.
Oh.
She's trying to give you tips, bro. That's what she's trying to do.
That's just
food photography, right?
Actually, I probably need to rub that out because I do a lot of Instagram stories here, and obviously I'm doing them on my phone, and so the text is all flipped over, right?
Right.
And I have a feeling people aren't focusing on me and what I'm saying, but they're probably trying to read what's written at the back here. This is just the online food photography course. It's 6 modules, and for the next launch, we are adding 1 more module. So adding artificial lighting to it.
Since we're here, tell us about this is for food, right? PHOOD, right? So tell us about Founding Food, if you can. Thanks, Ali, for the segue, and also what you wanted to achieve with it, and just generally what it's grown into essentially, because it seems like mashallah has been very successful.
So food started last year. I think as with a lot of people, when COVID hit, their businesses, their incomes were hit. So with me being a food photographer, it didn't help that all the restaurants had shut down. And even once these restaurants opened up, it's been tough. The amount of work has reduced because these restaurants are not as busy as they used to be. People perhaps are not eating out as much as they were. People have lost their jobs, so they don't have that extra income to be going out. So this hits restaurants, and then eventually that hits me as a food photographer because they don't have the money to market, etc. So I was thinking to myself at that time, what can I do? Like, everyone's pivoting. The pivot was the word, it was the name of the game at that time, wasn't it? So I was thinking, well, what can I do? How can I pivot as a food photographer? It's not like I can photograph a restaurant from home, right? Well, I could, but it's not very feasible. So I was like, how can I take my business online? And I have given workshops in the past for clients like Canon, and I work with them to kind of educate their buyers or their staff on food photography. So I was like, well, I've done workshops before. Why don't I just do it online? And that's how food came about. I wanted to take these in-person workshops where I teach food photography, say over a couple of hours or over a weekend, and put that into a course. And the beauty of having it online is that I'm not just reaching a certain location or a certain country. I've now opened up myself to the world, as it were. Anyone who's interested in food photography can now take a course online. And the reason why I was so interested in doing this was because I personally have taken a lot of courses online, some related to food, some completely off topic, and I have loved it. I mean, I remember saying to my husband when I finished university, I was like, I am never going back. I am never going to the full education space. Like, it was grueling. Going to university and getting a degree, especially now that I think about it, I don't even use it, but let's not go there. I was like, why did I put myself through that? And I am going to put my children through that, by the way. So they know they have to go to university regardless. Right. But it was tough. It was grueling. I hated exams. And I remember saying, I'm never going to go study again. But these online courses, they're shorter, they're punchier, they don't take as much time. They don't have an exam attached to the end of them, and you do them in something that you love, So that's how food came about. And yeah, it took me nearly a year to get my shiz together, but I got there. I launched it in February. We got 30 students on our first round, and we are in week 5 of the course as such. And the next launch will be May, inshallah.
Nice.
Inshallah. You got me thinking about university, because whenever I look back, I'm like, how did I finish? I don't know. Like, I'm looking at myself, I'm like, I cheated all 3.5 years. I don't know how I got through my exam.
Can you admit that publicly? Doesn't affect you.
I mean, I got my degree already. I'm good. I got my degree, but no, I look back at my university. I'm just like, Hasnan, how'd you make it, man?
I
did not attend class or anything. I don't know.
It's funny. I never went to university. Just putting it out there, I didn't go. I went for 1 year. I'm like, this is not for me because I'm more like a learn hands-on kind of guy. But I was
He's a
listening to this.
freelancer.
Or freelancer. Yeah, there you go.
That's what I was gonna say. A freelance thing.
I was listening to this. To I guess it was, I think it was a podcast. Some guy that I follow. And he said something very interesting. I'm not saying this is the be all or end all, but he said, if you take that same money that you put into university, like 9 grand a year, whatever it is, and you invest it in a business over 3 years, you can have you can build a business that will sustain you if you do it like smart in a smart way. You can build a business that will sustain you for life.
9 grand a year.
Guessing by your face, I don't know how much university is for you guys. But,
My
uni's what?
my university was 35,000 a year.
Okay, in the UK, I'm sorry, in the UK it's 9 grand a year. You guys, you're getting ripped off left, right, center. What can I say?
It's not even
£9.
Okay, basically, you take that same money, if you invest it in a business or you invest it in an idea, it can become sustainable for the rest of your life. So I think the question is, and the answer might be yes for many people. Is it worth the investment? And personally, I think, especially if you're going to go into becoming a doctor or a lawyer or anything that needs a degree to get there, it's definitely worth the investment. But I think, not that I'm giving advice. I haven't been to uni. I don't want to upset Sukaina as well because she wants her kids to go to uni as well. So I'm not gonna give my full opinion on that. But I think one thing that was interesting, what you said, Sakina, was about COVID and the fact that it forced you to kind of reboot, and not forced you to reboot, but it gave you space to think and I guess give you ideas to build more things, which I think is the same for all of us. We've spoken about this a lot on the podcast. Even this podcast itself was as a result of being bored at home / having a lot of ideas and things you want to achieve. But me personally, like I restructured my whole life just from those few months of having to sit with yourself and think and having that clear head, which I think is very important. I wanted to get back into travel just for a quick detour because I had a question about how travel impacts the psyche of you, and I think this is a very interesting conversation to have because I know you mentioned that you travel because you love it, and a lot of people that travel do as well. Me personally, like I find that I am fully a product of all my travels that I've been on throughout my life. Whenever I travel, I grow and in some way or another. I would definitely say that traveling for me is the biggest university course that I've ever taken. So for you, I guess, how does it impact you psychologically? How does it strengthen you in that aspect?
I guess one of the biggest things that travel has done for me is that it kind of breaks biases down. Sometimes, you have these biases growing up about certain religions, certain cultures, certain countries, and traveling has broken down a lot of those biases that I had. And it's also made me realize that, I don't know, maybe I'm going too deep into this, but it's kind of given me it's given me the freedom. I grew up in Tanzania. My parents were very conservative. I got married when I was 18 by choice, by the way. My parents didn't want me to get married. I always joke, you guys sold me away as a child bride, but they always come back and say, well, you did want to get married. We didn't want you to. But it's just given me the freedom, I guess, that I didn't have when I was much younger. And I just didn't want to be one of those people that grew up with regrets, and that grew up with, well, I could have done that. Now I can say I did do that. I've already done that. That's checked off of my list. So just in terms of, I guess, being a mother as well, it's given me a lot of confidence, and it's given me a lot of aspirations for my own children, especially my daughter. It's changed the way I want to bring them up and how I want their teens to be and their early 20s to be. So a lot of things that my parents did with us, the restrictions, I guess, we had, I don't want that for my own children. Do you know what I mean? And I think traveling has helped me with that a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good perspective because, growing up in my household, travel was like a luxury. Like we couldn't afford to do it. So growing up, I never traveled until I started making my own money. And then I kind of just told my parents, like, I'm traveling. And for them, it was just like, no, what if somebody kidnaps you? Like, how are we going to find you? And I have a phone. But yeah, growing up, it was a luxury. So it wasn't something that we could have done. And then now I'm doing it and I'm enjoying it. And it's just like, I'm not really missing out, because I wouldn't really appreciate it if I was a kid traveling to anywhere. Whereas now, the people that I meet and the food that I eat and the cultures that I come across, they mean more to me now. So this is just the fruits of your labor.
I think
Also, I mean, Hussein, do you have sisters?
I am the youngest of five. I have two sisters and two brothers. I'm
Okay,
spoiled.
imagine if your sister said to your parents at that time, right, I've saved some money, I'm going traveling. Like,
I get it. Yeah.
you know, whether we like it or not, the society that we have been brought up in, a lot of us, doesn't allow women who are single to just go off and travel. And in fact, forget being single, even married. I was having this conversation with my sister-in-law, and she was saying to me, you know, you are really lucky that you have married into a family that is so liberal and that actually does not care what you do. They don't lay down restrictions. And whilst that's a statement that almost angered me a little bit, saying that, well, how dare somebody say that I'm lucky, I'm doing whatever I want. The fact is, she is absolutely spot on, you know. The society that we live in, like that, you know, that cross between religion and culture, you know, that faint line that people use religion, but it's actually not, and they mix it with culture to stop you from doing the things you love. It really angers me, and I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want that for my own children, you know?
Right.
I would definitely 100% agree with you. I think that's
Yeah.
my biggest pet peeve, and this is something actually I've been thinking a lot recently while traveling, thinking a lot about recently. Is just, you know, how, you know, a lot of the times, and actually Sheikh Fayaz spoke about this. We spoke about this with Sheikh Fayaz last episode, or I guess 2 episodes ago. And we had this conversation about, I guess we as Muslims, and I don't want to, you know, make a general statement, but from what I've seen, I feel like we like to be safe just because it gives us a sense of comfort, and we confuse that sense of safety in the way we think, in the things we do, with with what God has ordained upon us when He hasn't actually done that. I feel like as Muslims we are meant for greatness, essentially, and I think that that greatness comes about when you break those, you know, cultural boundaries that we've set upon ourselves, broken those shackles that we set upon ourselves. And one thing I've definitely tried to do in the past few years is I try to meet as many people as I can who I don't see, who I have nothing in common with. You know, a lot of the friends that I've made, especially here in the States, many of them aren't even that religious. Many of them are quite, you know, liberal. But I love liaising with people like that because it broadens my horizons. It makes me think about things differently. And I feel like as Muslims, we should be able to put ourselves in any situation and be able to handle that situation, because as Muslims, we weren't meant for one location or to stay in the Middle East. We were meant to you know, travel the world and appreciate the world as it is. So I would definitely say, you know, a benefit for myself when it comes to travel is that broadening of horizons, because like you said, we have these biases in our head that are essentially just fear of the unknown. Right, however great or small they may be, the less you travel outside your circle. There's this quote by Will Smith that I always think about. He mentioned it once in one of his Instagram posts, and he said, the minute I left my home city of Philadelphia, or I guess the community he grew up in, he said, I realized that people outside of my community were not even thinking about the things that we were discussing inside my community. And that's something I think about a lot. The fact that, you know, as a community, you know, be it, you know, within all the communities we live in, or just generally the Muslim community around the world, or I guess our demographic, we often get lost in these conversations that we're having, in these discussions that we're having. And I always think about the level of conversation and thinking that we're having. And I always try to think about, okay, what is someone on the other side of the world talking about who is not in my community? And how can I think not on a higher level, but on a different level, because I don't want to be stuck in a bubble. I want to be able to think as broadly as I can, and I think traveling definitely is a big part of that. Ali.
I think what I was thinking about was it's a verse in the Quran. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but something to the effect that God actually wants us to travel and get to know other people outside of what we already know.
God created us in tribes so that we may get to know one another.
Yeah, something to that effect. That's what I was thinking about. But I lost my train of thought after that.
But you face that too in Colombia, right? Because you're basically, you're almost out of your comfort zone. You're working with and hanging out with non-Muslims. I mean, you mentioned last time that many Colombians who you meet are surprised that you're Muslim because you don't fit that stereotype of the way Muslims look, right?
Yeah, they expect it to be totally different, and they're surprised that when I told them that we believe in Jesus also. Uh, and then along with that, it's a language barrier as well because I don't really speak Spanish. I'm still learning, so the whole language issue comes into play when you're trying to say certain things that we're accustomed to saying in English, but they don't really translate over. So we have to simplify the language when we're speaking to different people, so that way, we don't end up saying something wrong. We've had a lot of loss in translation issues.
Really?
Yeah. But it's funny, like they get it and they'll laugh it off, but it's better not to make it too complicated.
Good times. Good times.
Yeah.
Sukaina, just winding down, I did want to kind of get into your social media, your Instagram. Obviously, you love traveling. You love we've spoken about that at length. And I think one thing that's very, I guess, central to your, dare I call it, your brand or your social media presence is the fact that you kind of post where you travel and talk about where you travel. We kind of spoke about why you do that. What would you say the downsides of social media are? And I think you have actually posted about this as well, but I just want to kind of ask you in person, because I feel like social media. I mean, I've got my own perspective on it, but I guess I'll ask you first. What do you think the downsides are of being like a travel vlogger who posts about their travels on social media?
So not just specific to travel, but I think there are a lot of downsides to social media, and being somebody who uses it and leverages it for my own brand or for my own business. It's amazing to think how many negatives and downsides there are to social media. I mean, for me, one of the biggest ones, and I don't know, I go in and out of phases with my social media. So right now I feel like I'm very active on it, but I will go away for months on end and not post anything. The biggest issue for me has been that now my children are growing up to an age where my daughter is 12. She wants a phone. She wants to be on social media. But I don't want her to be on there all the time. I don't, like I always say to Mariam that, you're at an age where your brain is still growing, and, in order for it to grow, you need to be out and about. You need to be off of screens, off of a computer. You need to be doing active things. She's into athletics, and, she's into, she loves making videos, etc. Like, she's a very creative person. And I tell her, I don't want you to be on a screen. I don't want you to be on a phone. She doesn't have a phone, but she has an Instagram account, and she'll want to check what's happening with the people she's following. And I'll tell her, no, I don't want screen time. And then she'll turn around and say, but Mom, you're on the screen. You're on social media. You're on your phone. And so it's a very fine line, and for her to understand that it's my work, but is it really my work when I'm just posting my family, or, we went out for lunch yesterday, a quick shot of what we ate, this keeping up on social media is another disadvantage. So one, i.e., I don't want my children to be on there all the time, because I feel like there's a time and a space for it, and they're too young to be on it right now. But the fact that, I'm on it, so they're constantly questioning why I'm on it. Another thing is, another disadvantage is the license that gives to people to make assumptions about your life, and, and give unsolicited advice. And I'm a fairly confident person. I don't really let it get to me, but I can imagine it getting to a lot of people, and then them changing their stance or their opinions or what they do or how they dress or what they eat based on what people tell them. And I mean, I'll give you an example. I was traveling somewhere, and it was at the end of Zilhajj. And, social media is not real. So I actually posted those stories into Muharram, those travel stories. And I get messages from people, and the worst thing is when you get messages from people in your own community, you know, questioning you. And I'm getting messages like, oh, I didn't know there were Ashura majlises in the Maldives.
That's horrible. Come on.
And you know, I sent that to my dad, and he goes to me, Sukaina, just ignore them, you know, like don't even answer. But like, I'm the type of person, I want to retort back. I want to give my answer. I almost wanted to justify myself, you know. And I remember, like, I wrote this whole like big message, and I passed it on to my dad, and I'm like, I'm answering this, and he goes to me, but why? You know, like, why do you care? So just this unsolicited advice that you get, or these opinions that people make of you, or the assumptions they make about you based on what you post, without actually realizing, well, I don't post about everything, you know, I don't post, like, I'm the type of person, if I go into somebody's social media account, I don't want to be bombarded by depressing news and like all the troubles that they're having. And like, there's so much depression going on. I don't want to be involved in other people's, you know, depressive thoughts too. So I have my own problems in life, but I'm not going to be splashing all of those over social media, because people get on here to like get a respite from their own issues, from their own problems, right? But that doesn't mean I don't have my own issues. And that's probably the bulk of it. And the, you know, the keeping up, I feel like the keeping up with the Joneses idea, you know, the fact that you can get sucked into this world of, they're doing it, so I need to do it too. I need to keep up, otherwise, you know, like for instance, that one travel to one place a month, you know, that kind of idea. Well, that started off as just something I wanted to do, but it then led to like, I need to keep up, you know, like my content I need to keep producing that content. I need to keep putting up the pictures. Otherwise I'm going to lose followers. People are not going to be interested. Well, that's not why I started this, you know, and I had to sit down with myself and say, Sukaina, that's not why you started this. You didn't start traveling to get the content. You started traveling to explore and to enjoy and to see what else is out there and just have a good time. So you need to come back down to why you started and have a really strong reason for that. Otherwise, you can easily get lost in social media. And gosh, there are so many other disadvantages that I can tell you, but that's probably for a whole other podcast. You know, I could go on and on about it, but it is what you make of it. And you just need to know your limits. You need to know when to take a break from it. But yeah, those are the main disadvantages, I'd say.
I think I fully, as someone who utilizes social media a lot as well, I fully agree with you in that, you know, it's definitely a double-edged sword, and I've kind of faced this challenge as well, because you know, many a time I've been asking myself, okay, why are you posting? You know, so what I've done now more so is I've made my account. In fact, what I did about, I think 2 years ago, so I decided my account's going to be purely for poetry and nothing else. So I archived or deleted all the photos of myself or of my life or anything personal. I just made it, okay, you are now that kind of Naira Waheed vibe where no one knows what she looks like. She just posts poetry and that's it. And no one knows, you know, what she looks like. But I think recently I've kind of realized as well that, and this is what's crazy about social media, is that, you know, it's almost like a brand identity, and people want to associate with you as well. They want to see who you are, so they can relate to you more and relate to your art more sometimes. So I think that's something I've kind of realized as well. And then above that as well, I've also realized that social media is a great tool to also network. So I've started to kind of use it to say, hey, by the way, I do videography. Here's what I'm working on now. You know, here's some projects that I'm excited to share and work on. So it's definitely a platform. I definitely do agree it's a double-edged sword. And like you said, it's tough because you do get these comments from time to time, which I would agree with your father that we should completely ignore, because I think when someone comes forward and puts forward you know, a comment like that, which wasn't even from a place of, hey, I want to advise you, or I want to, you know, assist you. Even the way the comment was worded was almost like in spite, right? And I get those comments all the time, and I always I learned this early on when I kind of fall into these traps, because you'll get a comment sometimes on my couplet saying, what do you mean by this? But the way it's phrased is like from a negative kind of view, and the minute you answer it, you're suddenly caught in a back and forth that you didn't even ask for.
That's exactly. And actually, I didn't listen to my dad, and I did send that message. What do they say? Parents are always right, right? And it started this back and forth, which it didn't get any of us anywhere.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so yeah, now I know. Listen to your dad.
Yeah, and you're also kind of like forced into a position where you're defending yourself where you don't need to defend yourself. You know, I think that's very important as well. I know with me and my
Yes.
poetry, I've kind of come to the conclusion that look, my poetry is art. It's out there. It's like a canvas. You don't look at a painting and say, okay, why is the sky pink if the sky is really blue outside? Like I'm not gonna sit there and kind of like defend it. You know what I mean? Ali, go ahead.
Hassan, do you ever get that on your films?
I do. I'll be honest with you. I do.
You do? I haven't seen anybody
I'm a
commenting on you.
confrontational person. I'm a
Shocking.
confrontational person. So, so I do. I get messages like about my film work, and I remember one message was, you shouldn't act. You're a Muslim, and I'm just like, you shouldn't live. I said something like that, and I was really rude and mean, and I hope
That was harsh, bro.
but yeah, I know. So I'm very confrontational, and I know I shouldn't be. I don't need to, and I've slowed down today because, it's like you have your grave, I have mine. If you don't like my stuff, then just keep it moving. If you want to leave a comment, then that just shows your character. I'm not going to respond anymore. But I do get that, not as much as you guys do, because you guys are out there. I'm more kind of reserved on my Instagram, but I don't really get that much. But I have faced that in the past.
It's funny because just before I lead into the last question for Sukaina, we discussed this. I think it was with I want to say Hanan about social medias, where I think you come to a realization where you realize that if someone, for example, is calling you out, for example, I don't know, Sukaina, they say, "Oh, you don't look like you had fun on that holiday," or Hasnain, they say, you didn't, you're not a good actor, but you're a good actor, right? So I think when you kind of realize that, or you had fun on that holiday, so I think when you kind of realize that what they're saying is not truth, you're no longer offended by it, and all that remains is the vice of the person. And I think for anyone who kind of like, feels that social media comments kind of get to them, that's what I would recommend, having that perspective that, who you are, what you're like, what your passions are, and you're living your truth. And as long as you're living your truth, no one can take that truth away from you. And I think it's just people that don't live their truth that are trying to take that away from you. Sukaina, I wanted to wind down with a final question. Obviously, this podcast is about art and spirituality, and we tend to ask all our guests this question. Mashallah, your passions are multifaceted. You're kind of doing everything you love, which I think is wonderful. What role would you say your spirituality plays in everything that you do? Your traveling, your food photography, and everything else.
So I would say that as a Muslim, as a hijabi, you are sometimes put in a spot where you have to make choices. And I don't know, I guess I'm mixing spirituality with religion, but I always say this with my daughter as well, that when you're put in a place where you have to make decisions, when you're out there, when you're in the public eye, but even privately, I always want to say to myself, when you're confused about something, always ask yourself, if I do this, or if I say yes to this gig, or if I go down this route, would I be able to go in front of my parents, first of all, and still be proud, and still be able to hold my head up high? And then I ask myself, would I be able to stand in front of my Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt and still be proud? And would I still be able to stand in front of my God and still be proud? And if I've ticked those 3 boxes, then I know that I can safely go out and do whatever I want on my social media and make all these life choices. So that's where spirituality is a part in what I post on my Instagram, what I do, the choices I make, where I go, what I do, who I go with, etc. These are the 3 questions, and not just about Instagram and not just about traveling, but just in life in general. And this actually came about from a very minor. It was a video that me and my daughter had done in the garden, and we were going to post it. And I remember that, you know, she wears the hijab, and like she must have, like she was into cartwheels or something, and so she did it. She finally, like, we practiced and she did it. And I remember like her, you know, like her like hoodie just went up a little bit, tiny little bit, you know. And she's like, but mom, I finally did this, you know, you have to post it, you know. And I said to her, well, ask yourself these 3 questions. You know, would you be able to go in front of your parents? Would you be able to go in front of your God? Would you be able to go in front? And in front of her parents, she's like, yeah, I would go in front of my parents. I'm like, well, would you go in front of your God like that? And she said, no, I guess I wouldn't. And these are the 3 questions that I like to ask myself before I make any choice in life, you know. So that's, I think, how spirituality or my religion or my values come into place when I am on social.
You know, those questions that you had, like, it actually reminds me of a quote from Imam Ali where he says that before I do something, I see God in it. While I'm doing it, I see God in it. And after I do it, I see God in it.
Beautiful.
And I'd also just like to say that your intention is a huge thing when it comes to this. So I remember I had this conversation with somebody, and they're like, okay, well, I totally get that. But then, Sukaina, you know, you show yourself, I don't know, you went snorkeling and you wore a burkini or a hijabi swimsuit. Would you go in front of your God wearing that? And my answer to this was, well, actually, you know what? If I've been invited to a charity gala dinner, I'm not going to go in my swimsuit, right? I'm going to go covered. I might go in a nice ball gown covered without, you know, with my hijab, but I wouldn't go in my swimsuit. And just in that same way, when I go swimming, I'm covered, right? But that doesn't mean I'm going to go and stand in front of my God or go on my prayer mat with my swimsuit. So it's all about your intention, I feel, as well, when you're doing a certain thing. And that for me is really important, especially when you're on social as well. What is your intention behind this? You know, is your intention correct? Is it right? Is it, you know, is your intention a good intention? So that's something I always think about as well, just in general life decisions, but in social media as well.
Profound. Sukaina, thank you so much. I want to take this moment to appreciate you and all your fantastic and inspiring work. If people want to get in contact with you or find you online, where can they find you?
You can find me on my Instagram, so Sukaina Rajabali, or you can find me on the food Instagram, which is learn.food.
Sukaina, thank you so much. Inshallah, we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks for having me, guys.